Kate's Christmas carrots, not the kind we left out for Santa's reindeer. Seems the world was so captivated by the plum coat and hat designed for the Duchess of Cambridge.
The sapphire earrings arrived under heavy discretion, sealed inside a velvet case carried through a private palace entrance as though they were just another treasured royal heirloom. But when an aging jeweler examined the delicate clasps beneath the workshop lights, he noticed markings hidden for decades, details that connected the earrings not to Catherine, Princess of Wales, but to Sarah Ferguson herself. Suddenly, a routine cleaning uncovered a forgotten royal link buried beneath glittering stones, raising one unsettling question. How did one of the monarchy's most recognizable jewels quietly pass from Fergie's collection into Kate's hands without anyone noticing? Before we uncover the hidden journey of these royal sapphires, tell us in the comments, do you think royal jewelry carries secret family stories the public was never meant to know? And if you enjoy uncovering hidden palace mysteries, subscribe now so you never miss the next royal revelation, the sapphire secret hidden beneath the crown. The jeweler almost dismissed the earrings as another routine palace restoration until the sapphires caught the light at a strange angle and forced him to look again. They rested quietly in his gloved hand, graceful and controlled, the very image the modern monarchy preferred to project through Catherine, Princess of Wales. Whenever she appeared wearing them, whether at ceremonies in London or solemn royal gatherings at Windsor, the deep blue stones seemed to reinforce the same carefully polished message: calmness, continuity, and stability for the future of the crown. Yet jewels often carried memories far older than the people wearing them, and this pair carried far more than elegance. He studied the setting slowly, tracing the tiny metal claws that held the sapphires in place. Years of experience had trained his eyes to notice what others ignored. Royal collections always followed patterns. Certain cuts belonged to one era, certain engravings to another. Palace inventory marks were normally precise, almost impossible to mistake. But beneath the clasp, hidden under decades of polishing and repairs, he discovered a nearly vanished hallmark that did not belong to Catherine's official collection at all. The mark was older, private, almost deliberately concealed. A chill settled over him as another memory surfaced. He had seen stones like these before, many years earlier, long before Catherine entered royal life. Back in the early 1990s, another royal woman had worn sapphires with the same dark glow and nearly identical cut. Her story had filled newspapers, divided palace loyalties, and left behind whispers that never fully disappeared. The more he examined the earrings, the clearer the truth became. The gems themselves were not new additions to the royal vault. They had been reshaped, reset, and carefully modernized, as though their earlier identity had been intentionally softened with time. He turned to old restoration records stored in his private archive. Some entries matched palace documentation, but others did not. A transfer reference was incomplete. A restoration log appeared to be missing entirely. Even stranger, one reassignment note from the mid-1990s ended abruptly without explanation. It was the kind of gap only someone familiar with royal procedures would ever notice. At that moment, the earrings stopped being jewelry. They became evidence of something quieter and far more complicated: the monarchy's talent for rewriting its own history without ever speaking a word aloud. Before Catherine's refined royal elegance defined the sapphire's legacy, Sarah Ferguson had already made it unforgettable in an entirely different way. But how did one jewel move from bold, headline-grabbing appearances in the hands of Fergie to the quiet, polished symbolism seen today? And what story does that hidden transition reveal? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The sapphires that vanished quietly. Long before the world became familiar with Catherine's carefully polished royal image, another duchess once carried the same deep blue sparkle into palace halls, charity banquets, and glittering diplomatic evenings. Yet unlike the quiet elegance now associated with royal sapphires, Sarah Ferguson wore them with unmistakable confidence. The jewels did not simply complement her presence, they announced it. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, when flashbulbs chased every royal appearance, Fergie became impossible to ignore. She laughed loudly, embraced bold fashion, and moved through royal life with a warmth that felt almost dangerous inside an institution built on discipline and restraint. Among the many pieces linked to her was a smaller pair of sapphire earrings surrounded by diamonds. They lacked the grand historical reputation of the crown's famous treasures, but that mystery only made them more intriguing. Fergie seemed deeply attached to them, wearing them repeatedly at private dinners and public events as if the stones carried memories rather than status. Then, everything changed. As her marriage to Prince Andrew crumbled, the royal machine quietly shifted into motion behind palace walls. Divorce inside the monarchy was never treated as a simple heartbreak. It became a careful exercise in separation. Homes changed hands, titles lost importance, and even jewels faced silent examination. Inside royal circles, ownership was rarely straightforward. Some jewels belonged to the crown, others were personal gifts, while a few existed in a shadowy middle ground no outsider fully understood. Rumors spread that certain pieces given to Fergie during the early years of her marriage had never been formally recorded. Wealthy friends, foreign connections, and discreet royal arrangements blurred the lines between private possession and palace property. As scandals and financial troubles followed her through the 1990s, her position within the royal family weakened. Invitations grew fewer, public appearances became cautious, and almost unnoticed, the sapphire earrings disappeared. Years later, when Catherine appeared wearing strikingly similar stones at official receptions, few questioned their history, but one experienced jeweler reportedly did. Beneath years of polishing and careful restoration, he noticed a tiny engraving hidden near the mounting. The initials were not Catherine's. They were not Diana's either. Alongside them sat a date from the late 1980s, delicately carved in a style linked to a private commission he remembered from the beginning of Sarah Ferguson's royal marriage. At that moment, the earrings no longer looked like simple royal accessories. They looked like forgotten evidence from a chapter the palace preferred to leave buried. Before Catherine's refined royal elegance defined the sapphire's legacy, Sarah Ferguson had already made it unforgettable in an entirely different way. But how did one jewel move from bold, headline-grabbing appearances in the hands of Fergie to the quiet, polished symbolism seen today? And what story does that hidden transition reveal? Let's find out. Sapphire earrings, hidden ownership line. Private commissions inside royal circles operate in a world that feels separate from official treasures. Crown jewels are carefully logged, guarded, and tracked through strict institutional rules. But private pieces move differently. They pass through trusted hands, shaped by personal choice, paid for quietly, sometimes marked with small engravings meant for only one wearer. They often carry emotion more than protocol, loyalty, affection, even moments of repair in relationships that never reach public record. On one such occasion, a jeweler looking closely at a familiar pair of sapphire earrings noticed something unsettling beneath their polished surface. The setting Catherine, Princess of Wales, wore appeared modern and refined, but it did not tell the full story. Beneath it sat an older structure, built in the design language of the late 1980s, heavier and more traditional. The stones themselves seemed unchanged, yet their housing had clearly been rebuilt, as though the piece had been carefully redesigned to fit a new chapter. The engravings offered the first quiet clue. They were not institutional markings, but private ones, tied to a personal commission. Cross-checking old records, the jeweler found a match in notes dating back to the year inscribed inside the piece. The details aligned too perfectly. The cut of the sapphires, their weight, even subtle natural inclusions that are impossible to fully replicate. Memory then complicated certainty. Years earlier, the same craftsman had repaired a loose prong on a similar pair during an overseas tour, requested urgently, and returned without ceremony. He remembered the anxious tone of approval and, shortly after, Sarah Ferguson wearing earrings that matched the description now before him. That memory, once insignificant, now carried unexpected weight. An inquiry was made through official channels, framed carefully as a simple archival question. The response came quickly but closed. The earrings were correctly listed under Catherine's allocation. No further explanation followed. In royal environments, silence often serves as its own boundary. Still, private notes told a different story. The original commission record described a privately funded gift created in the mid to late 1980s, intended for a royal wedding moment filled with hope and visibility. The description aligned perfectly with the stones now set in Catherine's modern design. What emerged was not just a history of a jewel, but a shift in identity. A pair of earrings once tied to Sarah Ferguson during the early chapter of her royal life had been reshaped, reassigned, and presented under a new wearer. The transformation was seamless, almost invisible, yet deeply unsettling in its implication. It left a lingering question: was this continuity by design, or a quiet rewriting of memory through craftsmanship? The jeweler closed the case, yet the sapphires no longer felt like simple beauty. They carried questions of ownership, silence, and hidden history. What secrets lie inside Buckingham Palace's tightly guarded vaults? And how can jewels become instruments of memory, power, and control that reshape the very image of the crown? Let's unravel the details. The silent rewriting of the sapphire legacy. The jeweler closed the case slowly. The sapphires still shimmered with a calm brilliance that seemed untouched, yet their meaning had shifted inside his mind. What once looked like simple beauty now felt like a question of ownership and silence. Inside Buckingham Palace, behind locked doors and guarded systems, the royal vault held more than jewels. It carried records of memory, power, and control. Each piece was not only stored but also filed, reviewed, and sometimes reinterpreted to fit the image of the crown. The public often imagines a treasure room filled only with glittering crowns. Yet within those walls are careful decisions about what is displayed and what fades from view. Some jewels belong permanently to the institution as symbols of continuity, while others sit in a softer space as personal gifts from weddings and ceremonies, their future shaped by shifting loyalty and circumstance. When relationships fracture, private negotiations replace public celebration. Lawyers and advisors quietly assess ownership while meanings are adjusted behind closed doors. In some cases, items are returned to palace control. In others, they are retained and recontextualized without announcement. Insiders also understand a subtle practice in which jewels can be reset or redesigned, so earlier associations become less visible, allowing a new setting to create a new narrative. Senior aides ensure that symbolism supports stability. Every visible object is treated as part of a broader image of continuity, and anything linked to controversy may be softened, reframed, or redirected. This process is both technical and symbolic, where even removing an engraving can feel like erasing a memory. Which raises the question surrounding the sapphires. Who authorized their transformation, and why was their earlier link to Sarah Ferguson removed so completely? The answer seems to lie beyond craftsmen, in the quiet space where image and inheritance intersect. There, decisions shape how history is remembered and presented. A jewel becomes more than decoration. It becomes a message carefully rewritten for future representation and public perception, including that associated with Princess Catherine and the image of calm continuity in London. Yet beneath tradition, a quieter mystery remains. What stories are lost when brilliance is repurposed and memory carefully edited away? Sarah Ferguson's life, after the Duke of York's divorce, was never just about separation. It became a quiet struggle for identity, acceptance, and survival under constant scrutiny. But how did she move from royal proximity to cautious distance? And what unseen pressures reshaped her place within London's royal circles over the years? Let's find out. The quiet language of sapphires and silence. For many years, Sarah Ferguson moved along the thin edge between belonging and distance, visible within royal circles yet never fully restored to the center she once knew. Her life after divorce from the Duke of York did not simply change in name. It unfolded into a quieter struggle, shaped by financial pressure, public scrutiny, and a steady reshaping of identity under constant observation in London and beyond. What once resembled a fairy tale presence gradually gave way to a life defined by careful appearances, selective invitations, and moments that carried more meaning than words ever could. In the years that followed, every attempt at rebuilding her life seemed to draw renewed public attention, as though her past never fully settled. Business ventures rose and fell. Interviews sparked new commentary. Yet the most lasting change was not in headlines, but in access. Royal life, she came to understand, does not end abruptly. It narrows gradually. What remains are diminished roles, reduced visibility, and memories tied to objects once taken for granted. Among those objects, jewelry carried its own language. Within royal tradition, pieces are more than decoration. They signal position, trust, and continuity. During her marriage, Sapphire jewelry once reflected her role as Duchess of York, associated with optimism and visibility. After the separation, however, reports and accounts suggested that only select personal items remained with her, while others were quietly reassigned or redistributed through internal arrangements that were never publicly detailed. No official statement confirmed pressure or obligation, but such patterns were not unusual within an institution known for subtly reshaping its symbols to reflect changing eras. As Catherine, Princess of Wales, rose in prominence in the early 21st century, a new visual identity emerged: blue sapphires, long linked with loyalty and calm authority, increasingly reinforced her image of stability and continuity, strengthening the narrative of a future queen. Within this quiet exchange of symbolism, memory becomes complex. One might imagine a moment at a formal London engagement when familiar stones caught the light in a way that felt unexpectedly personal. Recognition, if it came, would not require words. Sarah Ferguson, however, maintained a measured public stance. She offered no public challenge, no demand for reversal, instead continuing to appear at family milestones with composure that suggested restraint. That silence carried dignity, but also an unspoken cost, as history appeared to shift without visible resistance. Meanwhile, the sapphires continued their journey, reflecting evolving symbolism, transition, continuity, and the quiet passage of one chapter giving way to another. To the public, Catherine, Princess of Wales, represents calm continuity and royal stability. But what lies beneath that carefully crafted image of restraint? How did her jewelry begin carrying meanings far beyond decoration? And what deeper pressures shaped her identity inside a family often defined by quiet but constant turbulence? Let's uncover the intriguing details. The hidden weight behind the sapphire image. To many watching the British royal family, Catherine, Princess of Wales, appears as the embodiment of calm continuity, a future queen defined by restraint rather than spectacle. But behind carefully chosen appearances and quiet confidence, the meaning of her jewelry has come to carry weight far beyond decoration. Her public identity was built through discipline, absorbing royal expectations and shaping herself into stability within a family often surrounded by turbulence. Blue gemstones, especially the sapphire associated with Diana, Princess of Wales, became an early symbol of continuity and emotional connection to tradition. That ring, once belonging to Diana, Princess of Wales, quietly strengthened Catherine's public image as reassurance made visible. Yet jewelry inside the monarchy is never purely personal. It is curated, filtered, and sometimes reinterpreted by advisors who prioritize symbolism over memory. In that controlled environment, even earrings linked indirectly to old royal networks, including the sensitive line connected to Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, can carry unspoken significance. For Catherine, Princess of Wales, such associations sit beneath public composure, even when she projects ease and certainty during appearances in London or abroad. Inside palace offices in Buckingham Palace, concern can spread quickly when a trusted jeweler notices something unusual, such as a hidden engraving beneath carefully presented pieces. Such moments often trigger quiet reviews, rather than public reaction, as the institution prioritizes control of narrative over immediate explanation. Behind polished events in London and ceremonial appearances, the weight of inherited stories continues to shape perception more than most observers realize. The debate is no longer only about elegance or tradition, but about how fragments of history resurface through objects worn in plain sight. And as whispers move through elite jewelry circles, the question of what is revealed and what remains carefully unspoken becomes increasingly significant. Ultimately, the institution is forced to balance silence and transparency, knowing that every object linked to Catherine carries both historical memory and present expectation. Weighing the risk of public speculation against the need to preserve trust, palace advisors often prefer controlled silence, especially when details are uncertain or emotionally charged. Within that silence, Catherine continues to represent stability in public life, even as interpretations of jewelry pieces evolve beyond their intended meaning. The tension remains invisible, yet it shapes perception, especially when history, symbolism, and personal legacy converge in a single royal narrative. Every detail, seen or unseen, continues to matter deeply within the monarchy. The monarchy knows perception is power, and once a story escapes control, containment becomes the only option. But what exactly triggered this urgent scramble inside the palace, and why are long-standing secrecy agreements suddenly at the center of a quiet but intense effort to stop sensitive details from spreading further? Let's find out. Hidden history within the crown. The monarchy understands one truth above all: perception is power, and once a story slips out of control, it must be guided back before it spreads. Inside the palace, advisors quickly focused on containment. They asked who had heard the claims, whether anyone outside trusted circles had been told, and if any records or notes could later emerge. Attention turned to long-standing agreements meant to keep sensitive matters private, especially those signed by staff over many years of service. The jeweler involved was known for discretion and loyalty, yet even the most careful people can be drawn into reflection when old objects carry hidden histories. That possibility worried those managing the situation. Discussion shifted between two paths. One option was to stay silent and allow interest to fade without official comment. The other was to respond with a controlled explanation, framing the jewels as part of institutional heritage rather than personal property. Silence had often protected the crown, but it also had a way of feeding doubt when questions remained unanswered. Another concern hovered in the background. Past controversies connected to senior royal figures meant that any mention of earlier associations risked reopening public debate that had only just cooled. Advisors also considered a softer approach, presenting the jewels as symbols passed through generations in service of tradition, not tied to individual ownership. Yet there was uncertainty about how former holders might react. If someone connected to the story decided to speak openly, especially a person with direct experience, the palace would lose control of the narrative almost instantly. That unpredictability added pressure to every decision. At its core, the issue was about control of meaning. Objects within the royal collection are not just valuable items. They carry stories that shape public trust. If past connections were revealed too clearly, they could suggest hidden exchanges or favoritism, raising uncomfortable questions about how heritage is managed. Such doubts could spread beyond a single item and invite scrutiny of other treasured pieces. In the end, no final solution was chosen. The decision leaned toward caution, watching developments closely, preparing statements if needed, and maintaining calm in public. Yet beneath that calm, unease remained. Official records could be managed, but public memory is harder to guide, and once people begin to question the past, those questions rarely disappear completely. Even so, unanswered questions continued to echo quietly through conversations behind closed doors still. Royal jewels may appear silent, but they often signal power shifts, hidden loyalties, and changing royal narratives. What does it really mean when sapphires once linked to Sarah Ferguson reappear on Princess Catherine? And how do such carefully placed pieces reveal the monarchy's unseen story of continuity and control? Let's find out. The quiet journey of royal jewels. Royal jewels rarely speak, yet they never stay silent. More than decoration, they act as quiet signals of rank, favor, and distance within the royal world. A pair of sapphire earrings moving between duchesses is not simply a fashion choice, but a carefully managed story of shifting alignment. In one striking example connected to Buckingham Palace, sapphires once associated with Sarah Ferguson later reappeared on Princess Catherine, reframed for a new era of continuity. What the public reads as elegance is often institutional messaging, where history is gently edited through objects rather than words. Photographs change quietly, names disappear from captions, and former favorites slowly dissolve into silence without formal announcements. Over time, memory adjusts until what once belonged to one narrative is absorbed into another, smoother version of royal identity. For Catherine, the earrings reinforce poise and continuity, presenting her as a stable figure aligned with the crown's preferred story. Yet beneath the polished surface lies another layer, where these stones once marked a very different chapter in Sarah Ferguson's public life. The monarchy does not erase history outright, it refines it, shaping fragmented details into a coherent image of stability. Such control is less about deception than survival, an instinct older than most governments and deeply rooted in tradition. Even so, heirlooms carry emotional residue that no reset can fully erase. no matter how carefully they are repurposed. A jeweler observing the transfer stands at the edge of this silent system, seeing what others are never told. He holds no authority, only knowledge, and within royal contexts, knowledge can feel both insignificant and dangerously revealing. This raises a question that lingers beneath the sparkle. Does truth matter if it is never publicly acknowledged? Or is the real strength of monarchy found in its ability to transform private complication into public continuity without visible rupture? At moments like the 2018 wedding ceremony in Windsor, such details are rarely noticed by the crowd, yet they are carefully considered behind palace doors. What appears as effortless continuity is often the result of deliberate curation, where every jewel, photograph, and appearance is weighed for meaning and message. In that carefully controlled silence, the sparkle of sapphires becomes more than beauty. It becomes a language of transition, understood by few, but felt across generations, where every shift of ownership quietly redraws the boundaries of belonging and memory and royal identity. As the sapphires returned to Catherine's collection, everything appeared calm and unchanged, restored as symbols of royal tradition. But what hidden detail did a lone craftsman discover on those very jewels? And how could a subtle engraving begin to challenge everything the palace thought it had carefully preserved? Let's unravel the details. Sapphires, silence beneath crown. As the sapphires returned to Catherine's collection, gleaming under soft palace lights, nothing on the surface of the royal world appeared disturbed. In London and at Windsor Castle, the jewels were presented again as symbols of calm tradition, carefully placed back into circulation as if history had simply paused and resumed. Yet beneath that polished return, a different story lingered in the hands of a single craftsman who once noticed an engraving hidden near a clasp, initials too subtle for the public eye. He had seen enough to question what ownership really meant inside an institution that constantly reassigns meaning to objects. Years earlier, around 2018, the earrings had moved through private hands before reappearing in official settings, rebranded through ceremony and silence. Catherine wore them with steady grace at receptions and state occasions, including one notable evening in London where cameras captured only beauty, never origin. Meanwhile, Sarah Ferguson stood nearby at family gatherings, composed and unreadable, carrying her own quiet history without interruption or claim. The jeweler considered speaking during a visit to Windsor Castle on a cold morning in November 2023, but chose restraint instead. He understood that the monarchy does not break under revelation. It absorbs it, reshapes it, and continues forward. In that understanding, silence became part of the structure itself. What remains is a system where personal memory dissolves into heritage, where gifts become assets, and where gemstones outlive the narratives attached to them. The sapphires continue to shine, untouched by scandal, while questions about their past remain locked away with tools and ledgers. And so the palace moves forward, carrying its curated story, while those who once glimpsed its hidden layers return to ordinary silence, knowing that some truths are never meant to be spoken aloud today. So what do you think about the jeweler cleaning Kate's sapphire earrings, revealing they once belonged to Fergie? And what secrets are hidden? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.